Hi friends, it's Carl here with another Calm Survival, and today we're looking at my everyday carry general crap hauler backpack and what I keep in it and why I keep what I keep in it. Now the main thing to remember as I go through this is the why I'm carrying something is probably more important to you than the what I'm carrying, because not all of it's going to apply to you. And if you know why I'm carrying something, you'll be able to quickly determine if it's something you need to carry more of, need to carry less of, and how it can apply to your conditions. Now, why do I have a bag instead of just doing dad pockets, things like that? Well, one, as you'll see, I just have this tendency to have a lot of stuff with me. I've had quite a few jobs where I didn't drive. I used either public transport or I got dropped off. So I'm kind of used to having all day worth of stuff with me rather than in my car. And so you might compare that, and maybe this is stuff that you already realize in your daily life, either lives in your car, or maybe you have a desk at work, and it's the sort of stuff that is accumulated in that space. This is a long, slow evolution, and so it's important to kind of keep that in mind. It's like sand dunes or snow drifts. As the environment changes, so does the stuff. So what we're going to look at first is just some of the basics. Now, I carry several of these flexible platypus water bottles. I carry 2 liters in capacity worth. I usually only have 1 half-liter bottle full at any given time. Where I happen to live, finding fresh water is usually pretty easy from taps and things like that. There's a lot of different versions of flexible water bottles. Consider the weight. The silicone bottles tend to be pretty heavy. These tend to be a little less durable, but I've found over a couple of years they're fine. If you want to use just a regular plastic water bottle or whatever you want, that's fine too. The reason I don't use hard bottles for this purpose is simply just space. An empty bottle takes up less space once they collapse down like that. Okay, the next thing is food. Now, something about me, I have celiac disease, which means that oftentimes I struggle to, like I can't trust every restaurant. I can't just pick up food everywhere. So I need to think ahead a little bit farther. Okay, but in this, we've got some tea, we've got some miso soup mix. Yes, I do have a shot glass, but it is handy to sometimes have something small, for some condiments. You can share some things out if I know they're safe. Got some granola type bars because, it's basically just a quick, easy to replace meal. It's not going to be super ideal. What you can carry is really going to depend. If you are going to be around somebody with a nut allergy all the time, it's going to make that a little tricky. So making sure that we're planning this stuff out. These things are a vitamin B and caffeine kind of thing, a little bit of electrolyte, just sort of a general pick-me-up. Got a fork and a spoon and a set of chopsticks and a knife, just in case. There's a lot of times that I have to stop at a grocery store if I want to make a quick lunch. I'm making it out of the deli section, buying, the whole things, because pre-made stuff often doesn't work for me. So then we've got a little flat or flexible cutting mat I can use as a plate. I've got this, which is a high temperature grilling mat. Okay, so if I want to warm something up on just a normal day, throwing that onto somebody's barbecue plate means that I don't have to worry about what was on the barbecue last. But the other thing for a longer term situation is that's going to give me a cooking surface that packs up pretty small that I can adapt a lot easier. Pretty handy. I know a lot of people don't like cooking on plastic and things like that, but if you have the choice to eat or not, that might be worth it. And then I've got a couple of little leftover Starbucks instant coffees from the last time I traveled. A couple little candies down the bottom there. So what that means basically is I have a meal and a couple of things that I can, get some more food with. Because presumably, on the average day, the world hasn't ended. I can find a grocery store, I can find somewhere where I can get something, and that's just a few tools that's going to make that whole process a lot easier. Next, I carry a first aid kit. This one is a little bit bulky. I'll do a bigger video on first aid kits and kind of how they size out. But the snake bite bandage in there sort of limits the smallest size it can be. And even in urban areas, here, having a snake bite bandage is the thing you need. Again, that's not something everybody needs, so your mileage will certainly vary. Medications. This is a huge one. I want to make sure that I'm never without my meds. It's a small detail, but it's one that I know from other people's experience. You want to make sure if you're on something consistently, you want to make sure that you have access to it. And not only that, having enough so that you can titrate off it if you can't get more. So I always carry, what I'm going to need for, that period of time. It seems like a little bit overkill, but relying on always being able to get something and then having even a couple of days interruption, that's not great. So we want to make sure that if we are needing something, we have it with us. Now I've got a couple of boxes of extras. Okay, this one is cell phone stuff. So charger, cables. I've got a bag of tools. So I've got multi-tool on the back there. These organizer pouches are great. The advantage of having just the one big open hole backpack means that I can just throw stuff in it. But it does mean that you need to spend a little bit of weight to have some sort of organizational structure. So we've got a little mini lighter, a sunglass cleaning cloth, some markers, some pens, some zip ties, notebooks. This little tin has a small fire kit and some sewing stuff in it. Got some cat crap for cleaning sunglasses and things like that. A little bit of rope. This little carabiner guy matches up with this 3mm cord. Means I can make an improvised tie off somewhere. Yes, I know a bunch of knots, but sometimes having something you can work with quicker is nice. Got a little micro multi-tool pliers, and this one has scissors, some tweezers, a little pry bar. I've got little flags like this all over the place because sometimes, especially when you're traveling, it's nice to be able to flag off a bag and just go, hey, make sure that goes out of your carry-on and into your checked luggage later. I need every help with organizing I possibly can. We got a little mini flashlight. This one happens to be a UV one because I carry another flashlight on my key ring. And then we just got some notebooks and some other documents. If you had to leave your house in the next 10 seconds, do you have either copies or original copies of all of the documents somebody else might want? Now, that is my advantage. Yep. A white male in a lot of places can get away with a lot less ID than a lot of other people can. That is the truth. I have friends who have needed to give wedding records just so that they could prove that they were married to who they say they had to, said they were. That can be uncomfortable in a general sense. It can be really critical in a bigger sense. I know we don't like to think about the world that way, but making sure that you have access to those documents or copies of those documents is really, really important. Same thing with medical information. Do you know the entire medical history of your partner? Look, there's probably some details that could be missed. So having a notebook, especially if there's a few things that might be important if you miss, really, really important. Now I've got a couple of buffs and a cotton bandana. Okay, the cotton bandana is much more on the survival side of things because you might need something that isn't going to melt. But I'm also a bald guy, which means that hats are something I always have with me. Now, this little pouch is just sort of the general catch-all. Got, some little thing of painkillers, tissues, spare cloth face mask, and hand sanitizer, because 2020. And this pouch doesn't normally live in the kit or in the backpack, okay? But it's just some quick travel stuff, okay? So, have a shower, things like that. So if I'm maybe going for somewhere longer, I've at least got, a toothbrush and some bits and pieces. I could also throw in a raincoat, maybe, a soft shell or a insulated layer into my backpack. It really depends on the conditions at the time of year. And so it's important to kind of look at this whole big bunch of stuff, and you may look at it and go, I'm never going to carry all of that. But you may carry bits and pieces. It may already be part of your lifestyle. As I said, this is not just what you need to do. This is how I make it work for myself. And I'll go over, hopefully in future videos, we'll go over some of the other ways that you can go about it. To me, it's just important to remember, what is the scope of what we're trying to do? I could have all of this stuff times 3 in a monstrous backpack that's too heavy to carry, or I could go without. I could just live life with what's in my pockets. Now, I've struck a compromise that's carrying more than what a lot of people do on a daily basis, but that's also the nature of all the jobs I've had, all the life experience I've had, all of that history. And that's not better or worse than anybody else's. That's just what is. Okay? So, I know this one has gone a little bit long, but there's only one other thing that I want to point out. When people talk about bug-out bags, especially urban sort of things, you'll often see something called the gray man principle. Now, that isn't necessarily being invisible. It's being unnoticed. It's being someone that doesn't stand out. Do you know what would stand out in a crowd, and what always stands out to me in a crowd is a single lone person wearing a dark hoodie, carrying a black or dark gray backpack. Yeah, it's not something that people wear normally. Even somebody who wears a lot of black, the style and cut of their clothes, that makes sense. There's a difference between a goth kid and a security guard. And a security guard in uniform looks different than somebody kind of looking like a security guard but not wearing a uniform. So is a bright orange backpack going to gain attention? People will notice it, which might be good for me. Might mean that I can see it, or I can keep an eye on it. But it also means that in a crowd, I blend in a little bit more. Yeah, I get called a tourist often, but only after I start talking. So keep that in mind. Think about what that entire picture is going to look like. I know not everybody can carry a backpack, so, make it look like a camera bag. Make it look like a briefcase. Make it look like something that you should be carrying and have every reason to carry. And that ultimately is the bigger and more important part of the gray man idea. You don't necessarily want to go unseen. You do want to go unnoticed. All right. Hopefully that gives you guys a bit more to chew on. I'm Carl. This has been Calm Survival. We'll catch you next time.